When Maria discovered the map hidden among her deceased grandfather's belongings, she never imagined that those faded scribbles would lead her to the greatest mystery that the community of São Gabriel da Cachoeira had kept for 3 generations. Maria Souza grew up listening to her grandfather Antonio's stories about mysterious places lost in the green immensity of the Amazon. At 62 years old, Antonio had been one of the most respected guides in the region, knowing every trail, every stream, and every secret that the forest whispered to those who knew how to listen. When he passed away in early 2023, he left behind more than just memories. He left an enigma that would remain hidden for months. It was during the cleaning of her grandfather's house that Maria found, among yellowed photographs and fishing, tools, a piece of tanned leather with strange drawings. These weren't conventional maps, but rather a combination of indigenous symbols, river markings, and something that seemed to indicate a specific location. The leather was wrapped in cotton, fabric, along with a handwritten letter that said only, "For Maria, when I'm no longer here. The truth is where the waters sing differently." Maria knew that trembling handwriting well. It was her grandfather's writing in his final years, when his hands no longer obeyed with the same precision as before. She turned the map several times, trying to decipher the symbols. Some seemed to represent rock formations. Others resembled drawings of animals she recognized from local culture. There were also small numbers, almost imperceptible, marked at specific points. Intrigued, Maria decided to show the discovery to her cousin Joaquim, who worked as a tourist guide and knew the region as well as their grandfather had. Joaquim examined the map carefully, frowning as he recognized some of the natural landmarks represented. "This here looks like the meeting of the Curicuriari River with the Itzana," he said, pointing to one of the markings. "And this symbol, I've seen something similar in the rock paintings of the Tunui mountain range." Maria's curiosity transformed into determination. She knew her grandfather would never do anything without purpose, and that enigmatic message, about waters that sing differently, echoed in her mind like a call she couldn't ignore. But was she prepared to discover what Antonio had kept secret for so long? 2 weeks after discovering the map, Maria and Joaquim departed from São Gabriel da Cachoeira in a motorboat equipped with supplies for 3 days. The 15-horsepower motor cut through the dark waters of the Rio Negro as they followed the first indications on the map. Maria held the tanned leather carefully, protecting it from humidity with transparent plastic, while Joaquim navigated between the river's meanders with the expertise of someone born on those waters. The first landmark they managed to identify was a peculiar rock formation, where 2 gigantic stones balanced one on top of the other, creating a silhouette that resembled a natural arch. "Stone Gate," said Joaquim, reducing the motor's speed. "My father brought me here when I was a child. He said it was a sacred place for the ancients." Maria checked the map and confirmed. There was the first symbol, drawn with precise strokes that corresponded exactly to the rock formation before them. From there, the map indicated they should follow a smaller tributary, almost hidden among the dense vegetation. It was a narrow stream where the boat could barely pass without hitting the branches that leaned over the water. The forest's scent intensified with every meter traveled upstream. It was a humid and fertile aroma, mixed with the perfume of wildflowers and the characteristic odor of decomposing vegetation that fed that exuberant ecosystem. Joaquim constantly had to cut the motor and use an oar to push the boat through the shallower sections. Maria observed everything around with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. Metallic blue butterflies danced over the water's surface, while capuchin monkeys watched them from the treetops, emitting curious sounds that echoed through the forest. It was as if they were penetrating a lost world where time had stopped and nature reigned absolute. After 4 hours navigating the stream, they reached a point where the water became completely impassable for the boat. The map indicated that from there on, the journey should be made on foot. Maria and Joaquim tied the boat to a sturdy tree and began preparing backpacks with water, food, and necessary equipment for the hike. "From now on, we follow only the signs your grandfather left," said Joaquim, checking the GPS to mark the position where they left the boat. I hope he knew what he was doing. Maria pressed the map against her chest and murmured a silent prayer. Something told her they were about to discover much more than they imagined, but she also felt there was no turning back. What secrets awaited in the depths of that ancestral forest? The jungle trail that Maria and Joachim followed seemed to have been carved by someone who knew exactly where they were going. Ancient machete marks on tree trunks, barely visible after years of growth, guided them deeper into the Amazon's green cathedral. The canopy above was so dense that only scattered rays of sunlight managed to pierce through, creating an almost mystical atmosphere where every sound seemed amplified by the humid silence. Maria had never ventured this deep into unexplored territory. As a nurse in São Gabriel da Cachoeira, her connection to the forest had always been from the safety of the riverbanks and well-known paths. But here, surrounded by trees that seemed to tower endlessly upward and vines thick as her arm, she felt both insignificant and strangely connected to something ancient and powerful. The air was thick with moisture and filled with sounds she couldn't identify. Bird calls that seemed like conversations in a forgotten language, the rustling of unseen creatures moving through the undergrowth, and always the distant sound of running water. Joachim moved with the confidence of someone born to this environment. He paused frequently to examine broken branches and disturbed earth, reading the forest like an open book. "Your grandfather was here," he said, pointing to a tree where initials had been carved years ago. "A.S. Antonio Sousa. This mark is maybe 10, 15 years old." Maria ran her fingers over the weathered carving, feeling a connection to her grandfather that transcended time. He had stood in this exact spot, had breathed this same humid air, had felt the same sense of anticipation that now coursed through her veins. The map led them to a clearing where an enormous Brazil nut tree stood like a monument to time itself. Its trunk was so massive that it would take 6 people holding hands to encircle it, and its crown disappeared into the canopy above. At its base, partially hidden by fallen leaves and forest debris, they found what they were looking for: a small cave entrance, barely large enough for a person to crawl through. The opening was partially concealed by carefully arranged stones and branches, camouflaged so expertly that they would have walked past it without the map's precise guidance. "This is it," Maria whispered, her heart pounding as she compared the cave entrance to the final symbol on her grandfather's map. The drawing was exact, down to the peculiar shape of the rocks that framed the opening. Joachim knelt beside the entrance and peered into the darkness beyond. A cool breeze emerged from within, carrying with it a scent that was different from the jungle around them, cleaner, with a mineral quality that suggested underground water. "There's definitely something in there," he said, his voice filled with the same mixture of excitement and apprehension that Maria felt. "And I can hear water running. Maybe this is where the waters sing differently that your grandfather wrote about." But as they prepared to enter the mysterious cave, neither Maria nor Joachim could have imagined what lay waiting in the darkness beyond, a discovery that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the history of their beloved Amazon. Armed with headlamps and flashlights, Maria and Joachim squeezed through the narrow cave entrance, emerging into a chamber that took their breath away. The space opened up dramatically beyond the tight opening, revealing a natural cathedral carved by centuries of underground water flow. Stalactites hung like ancient chandeliers from the ceiling, while smooth stone formations created natural benches and platforms throughout the cavern. But what truly captured their attention was the sound, a melodic gurgling and echoing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Now I understand what your grandfather meant," Joachim whispered, his voice reverberating strangely in the acoustic chamber. "The water really does sing differently here." The sound was unlike anything Maria had ever heard in nature. It wasn't just the typical dripping and flowing of underground streams, but rather a harmonious resonance created by water moving through perfectly shaped stone channels and hollow formations. Each drop seemed to contribute to a natural symphony that had been playing in this hidden place for thousands of years. As they explored deeper into the cave system, their flashlight beams revealed something that made them both stop in their tracks. The walls were covered with petroglyphs, ancient rock paintings that depicted scenes of daily life, hunting, and ceremonies. But these weren't just any indigenous artwork. The style and symbols were more sophisticated and detailed than anything Maria had seen in the regional museums. Human figures danced around geometric patterns, animals moved in processions across the stone canvas, and celestial bodies were represented with mathematical precision that suggested advanced astronomical knowledge. "Maria, look at this," Joachim called, his voice tight with excitement and disbelief. He had discovered what appeared to be a natural shelf carved into the rock wall, and, on it, sat several artifacts that clearly didn't belong to any known indigenous culture from the region. There were ceramic vessels with intricate designs, stone tools carved with impossible precision, and what appeared to be a collection of small gold objects that gleamed even in their flashlight beams. Everything was perfectly preserved by the cave's constant temperature and humidity. But the most extraordinary discovery was yet to come. In the deepest chamber of the cave system, where the water's song reached its most haunting crescendo, they found a stone tablet covered in symbols that neither of them could decipher. The inscriptions appeared to be a form of writing system, complete with what looked like numerical calculations and star charts. Beside the tablet lay a leather journal, remarkably well preserved and wrapped in oiled cloth. Maria's hands trembled as she recognized her grandfather's handwriting on the first page. "If you're reading this, then you found what I've protected for 30 years. This discovery could change everything we know about the Amazon's ancient history, but it could also destroy the peace of our people if it falls into the wrong hands." The weight of responsibility suddenly crashed down on Maria's shoulders. Her grandfather hadn't just left her a treasure hunt, he had entrusted her with a secret that could rewrite the history books. But at what cost? As Maria carefully turned the pages of her grandfather's journal by flashlight, the full scope of Antonio's secret began to unfold. The entries, written over a span of 3 decades, revealed how he had first discovered this cave in 1993, during a hunting trip that had gone longer than planned. Lost and seeking shelter from a violent storm, he had stumbled upon the entrance purely by accident. What he found inside had changed his life forever, but also burdened him with a secret that grew heavier with each passing year. Day 15. "I've been coming back here for 2 weeks now," read one entry from 1994. "Each time I discover something new. The artifacts, the paintings, the writing. None of this matches anything our people remember or what the anthropologists have documented. If this gets out, they'll come. The universities, the government, the treasure hunters, they'll tear this sacred place apart, and our community will never be the same." Antonio had understood something that many others might have missed. Sometimes, preservation meant protection through secrecy. The journal revealed that Antonio hadn't been alone in his discovery. Over the years, he had carefully shared the secret with 3 other elders from different indigenous communities: a Yanomami shaman named Davi, a Tucano leader called Manduka, and an elderly woman from the Baniwa people known as Yolanda. Together, they had formed an unofficial council of protectors, taking turns to visit the cave, document its contents, and ensure its preservation. They had agreed that the knowledge would only be passed down when the time was right, and to people they could trust completely. "Davi believes the symbols tell the story of a great migration," read another entry from 2007. "People who came from across the great waters thousands of years before the Europeans. Manduka thinks their astronomical calendars more accurate than anything we know. Yolanda says their songs written in stone, instructions for ceremonies that could heal both land and people. Maybe they're all right. Maybe this place holds truths too big for any one interpretation." Antonio's respect for different perspectives and his understanding of the collaborative nature of indigenous knowledge shone through every page. But as Maria read further, she discovered that the burden of keeping this secret had taken its toll on her grandfather. The final entries, written in his increasingly shaky handwriting, revealed his growing concern about what would happen when he and the other guardians were gone. "Maria has her mother's curiosity and her great-grandmother's wisdom," he wrote just months before his death. She works healing people, understands the responsibility that comes with knowledge. If something happens to me, she's the one who can decide what comes next. But she shouldn't have to carry this alone. Joachim, who had been photographing the petroglyphs with his phone, suddenly grabbed Maria's arm. "Listen," he whispered urgently. "Do you hear that? Over the cave's natural water song, they could make out voices echoing from the entrance. Human voices, speaking in Portuguese, getting closer. Someone else had found the cave." Maria's heart raced as she realized that their secret discovery might not remain secret for much longer. Had they been followed? Or worse, had someone else been searching for this place all along? The voices grew clearer as they approached, and Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her when she recognized the familiar cadence of indigenous Portuguese mixed with traditional greetings. 3 figures emerged from the cave entrance, moving with the quiet confidence of people who belonged in this sacred space. The first was an elderly indigenous man with weathered hands and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the forest itself. Behind him came a middle-aged woman carrying a traditional woven bag and a younger man who moved with the careful respect of someone in a holy place. "You must be Maria," said the elderly man in a gentle voice that carried the same warmth Maria remembered from her grandfather's tone. "I am Davi. Your grandfather spoke of you often. We have been waiting for you to find this place." The relief in Maria's chest was overwhelming. These weren't intruders or treasure hunters. They were the other guardians Antonio had written about in his journal, the keepers of the secret who had protected this wonder for 3 decades. Yolanda, the Baniwa elder, approached Maria with a knowing smile. "Your grandfather told us you would come when you were ready. He said the forest would call to you just as it called to him." She gestured toward the petroglyphs and artifacts surrounding them. "This place has been waiting for a new generation of protectors. The old guardians are growing few, and the world outside is changing faster than ever. We need people like you. People who understand both the old ways and the new world." Manduka, the Tucano leader, had been examining Joachim's photographs of the petroglyphs on his phone. "Technology can help us now in ways your grandfather never imagined," he said thoughtfully. "We can document everything properly, create records that will preserve this knowledge even if something happens to the physical site. But we must be careful about who we trust with this information." The balance between preservation and protection had become even more delicate in the digital age. Over the next several hours, the 5 of them sat in the singing chamber as the elders shared stories that had never been written down. They spoke of other hidden sites throughout the Amazon, of ancient trade routes that connected civilizations across thousands of miles, and of knowledge systems that had been protecting the forest long before anyone called it the lungs of the earth. Maria began to understand that what they had discovered wasn't just one cave, but part of a vast network of sacred sites that held keys to sustainable living that the modern world desperately needed. As the sun began to set outside, casting long shadows through the cave entrance, Davy placed his hand on Maria's shoulder. "Your grandfather chose well," he said. "You have the heart of a healer and the mind of a protector. This place, these stories, this responsibility, they're yours now, but you don't have to carry them alone. The question is, what will you do with this gift?" Maria looked around at the ancient artwork, the mysterious artifacts and the faces of the people who had become her unexpected mentors. She realized that this discovery wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a new chapter in an ancient story, and she would play a crucial role in deciding how that story continued. The waters continued their eternal song, as if welcoming the newest guardian to their timeless symphony. Maria's incredible journey shows us that the most profound discoveries often come from honoring those who came before us. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more amazing Amazon tales and share your thoughts below. What family mysteries have shaped your own path?